Hello, welcome back to our week one walkthrough. So a few things that I want to talk to you about in this video. We're going to dive into the first writing prompt, but I did want to start off by talking about the difference between argumentative and persuasive writing. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because this is a huge part of what we're doing this summer term. Our focus is going to be argumentative writing. So I want to talk about the differences between the two because I think we tend to lump them in together and we think they're synonymous, and they are in a lot of ways. But the main difference between them that we'll talk about in just a second is conducting research, right? Having that logical appeal rather than an emotional appeal. There are three main ways that they differ in purpose, the tone in which something is written, and the end result. What does the author want the audience to do at the end? So we're going to go through this pretty quickly because, again, there are some main takeaways that I want you to get from this. The first is the purpose of writing, right? So argumentative pieces tend to be more informative. You're letting the audience know, here's your stance, here's your side, but you're not necessarily trying to get them to agree or disagree with you, right? You want them to acknowledge that your side is valid, that it's a valid option, but they don't necessarily need to be swayed to your side yet, right? So for argumentative writing, it tends to be more fact-based, more of a logical appeal, whereas persuasive pieces tend to draw in that emotional aspect. And then next is the tone. It, again, goes hand in hand, right? An argumentative piece is more authoritative. You're informing the audience. You're presenting facts as that main form of evidence. And a persuasive piece tends to draw in more emotion. Not always, can be less formal due to that appeal to pathos and emotion. It doesn't always have that, but it tends to in terms of persuasion, because emotion tends to be very persuasive. And then finally is the end result. So an argumentative piece, the audience learns of your stance and likely several other sides surrounding the issue, but it's establishing that your stance is the best option based on evidence and research that you've conducted. And you'll see in bold at the bottom there, research to locate credible evidence is going to be incredibly important this quarter, which is why we're about to talk about database searching, as that's related to our first homework assignment. So we're going to get to that in just a second. And then finally is the end result for a persuasive piece. Uh, it tends to posit the author's stance as the one that's the most important. However, or it might even just give that as the only option. But the ideal end result is that the audience will agree with you, right? But in argumentative writing, that's not always the case. We're trying to get the audience to acknowledge that we are valid, this is a valid option, and you're giving the factual evidence as to why. So what we're doing this quarter, our focus is how to create effective argumentation. So you're going to conduct research about an issue. You're going to take sides on that potential or best solution to that issue, and you're going to argue for which solution or which side is the best option. And this is going to be focusing on problem-based research. So problem-based research we're going to be talking a little bit more about during week two. But I wanted to give this brief intro just to give you an idea of how is our writing going to be differing from persuasion. It's going to be more fact-based, and we're going to be doing a lot of research this quarter. So this brings me to our next point that I want to talk to you about for today, and it is going to be database searching. So if you haven't done database searching yet, using a research database to locate credible, scholarly, peer-reviewed sources, I'm going to do a really quick run through with you, and our first homework assignment does deal with using databases to search. So our first one that I wanted to show you is Google Scholar. Google Scholar is Google's version of a research database. And if you click on it, you can see all these things coming up, different things that I've typed in. It's a hint for what our homework assignment is going to be about. But essentially what you type into the search bar, last quarter we did ghost hunting. Let's do that one. When you type in your search, right, it gives you a list of databases, or excuse me, a list of articles that or books that pop up. On the left-hand side there, you should be able to see the advanced search option is in these three little bars at the top left here. You can get to the advanced search. The homework's going to ask you to take a look at the advanced search function. But essentially, Google Scholar will give you this list of different resources from a variety of places on the internet. This top one says it's a book. Right below that, the second option looks like an article. And the other cool thing about research databases is you'll notice there's a little citation link. If you click Cite, it will give you a citation, an APA style citation for the article. Let's say you want to use this one in your research or use it for an assignment, it'll cite it for you because you're going to need that for a references page. So that's a really good thing that databases do. So anyway, this is Google Scholar. That's going to be a really basic one that we're going to be using for our first homework assignment. But the next one that I wanted to talk to you about is really important. It's the one through Oregon Tech. So Oregon Tech, the library, we're going to type in Oregon Tech Library to Google. Very first link that should pop up is a library. Right in the middle there, electronic resources, you're going to click that. And then this is our A through Z databases list through Oregon Tech. If you're logged in with your student information, you have access to all these databases that the average person doesn't, because these do require a paid subscription that Oregon Tech pays for. So the very first link is Academic Search Complete. You'll notice it says popular. That is the one we're going to be using for the first homework assignment and the one that I would encourage you to use for research that we do this quarter also. So what it looks like when you click on it is it has three search boxes. We're only going to be using the first one, but the three search boxes can change your results. The more keywords that you put in, the more your results are going to change. So let's put in ghost hunting, search, and you'll notice this looks a little bit different than Google Scholar did. Lets us know we found 76 results. Lets us know here's a journal article, here's a journal article, here's a periodical. So there are different types of sources that it will show you also. But let's click on this first one here. Another cool thing that, again, databases do is cite. Like I mentioned for Google Scholar, over here on the right-hand side, you'll see the cite link. If you scroll down to APA 7th, there is your citation. It cites it for you. So it's really, really nice that it does that. Let's go back to our results list. So that is Academic Search Complete. We are going to be using this database for our homework assignment also. We go back to the home page. You'll notice this is the advanced search right below. So this is the advanced search for this version. Looks different than Google Scholar did. It's a little bit more involved. If we go back to that databases list, it is worth mentioning that there are so many databases. We have 89 through Oregon Tech that you can use. It really depends your research that you focus on this quarter. We'll talk more about how to choose your research topic next week. But if you go to all subjects, let's say whatever you want to research ends up being very, let's see, it's something to do with civil engineering, right? So we'll click civil engineering. It will let you know what are your best bets for database resources to get started, who is your librarian at Oregon Tech, and how can you contact them if you need any help. So that's our research database through Oregon Tech. Really useful, going to be used for our first homework assignment. Okay, so stay tuned for that. All right, now you'll notice that we're back on Canvas. We're looking at the week 1 module under modules on Canvas. The very last link in here right now is the assignment prompt for our first major writing project. It's not due during week 1, but I did want to bring it to your attention so you can start thinking about it and you know what's coming up for a first major project. So if you click on the prompt, it will download or it will show you the Word document. But I wanted to go over the prompt with you so you're aware of what this project is. It is called the Rhetorical Précis. So if you're like, how do I pronounce that? It is Précis. So that's how you say it. The rough draft is going to be due July 3rd, responses by July 5th. So peer review we'll talk more about in a little bit in the same video. Essentially the way it will work is you're going to be partnered up with 1 or 2 people to read their rough draft and leave comments before the final draft is due on July 7th. This is only 200 to 300 words, pretty short project, it's worth 50 points, and there's only one required text. It is a scholarly source that you locate on a topic of your choice. So you get to choose any topic you want to research just for practice. So you can think about this as research practice for our first week. And a scholarly source comes from a research database. So whatever I just showed you, right, in Google Scholar and EBSCO, Academic Search Complete, that is where you're going to be looking to find whatever source that you want to use for this assignment. So let's look at the overview. For your first writing assignment, you're going to write a précis. It requires you to analyze and explain a complicated text in 4 sentences. The goal is to demonstrate a clear understanding of not only the general topic, but more nuanced points also. So what you're going to do is you're going to provide the full APA citation. We use APA in this class. We'll talk more about that too. In your first sentence, you give the genre, what's the date that it was published, what is it about, so does the author argue, suggest, imply, and then the that clause stating the major claim or thesis of the text. Your second sentence explains how they developed their thesis. Your third sentence explains the speaker's purpose, and then your final sentence is who is the intended audience for that piece. I'll show you a sample in a second, okay? But the purpose is to understand the central argument of a text and then explain it concisely. You only get 4 sentences, so you'll want to avoid run-ons, fragments, things like that. You can use semicolons to help, but it does have to be between 200 and 300 words. So these are going to be pretty complex 4 sentences that you're using for the précis. You can't go over 4 sentences for that one. That's the challenge here. So if you scroll down on the prompt, there are 2 sample précis that you can view here. So the first one, Vicky Waddell is the author from 2003. You'll notice the way it's split up, and I've highlighted it here. 4 paragraphs, they correlate to 4 sentences. So these are the 4 sentences of the précis, no more nor no less. At the very end, you're going to put your word count. This is 203 words long. That's within the range, right? 200 to 300 is what I'm asking for here. Scrolling down, you'll see another sample. These are formatted correctly also. They have an APA citation right above, and then the 4 sentences right below of the précis. So this one's 207 words. I would encourage you to look at the samples, see how they're written. They are complex sentences, but they reach the word count, and they are not run-ons either. They're grammatical complex sentences that explain the source pretty concisely. So that's our first writing project, is a rhetorical précis. But that's it. So it's only 200 to 300 words. It's due on July 7th. It's worth 50 points. And there are a couple samples for you to look at. And it's only based on a source that you find, any topic you want. Does not have to be the topic you end up sticking with for the research we're going to be doing this quarter. It's just basically practice for database researching. Okay, so that's our first project, the rhetorical précis. The last thing I wanted to talk to you about for our week 1 video is peer review. So our peer review requirement for this class is there are only going to be 2 writing projects that we do peer review for. The rhetorical précis is the first one that requires peer review. So just talking about peer review a little bit, how's it going to work? I know I get a lot of people that they aren't a big fan of peer review, but it really makes your work stronger. It helps you find lower order and higher order concerns, which I'll talk to you about in a second. But essentially, the more sets of eyes on your work, the better. So here's what global and higher order concerns mean versus local or lower order concerns. So global issues refer to large scale aspects, organization, the structure of an assignment, versus local issues are more small scale, spelling, word choice, run-on sentences for the précis, that sort of thing. But the balance here is you'll want to leave feedback for both of those things. So you don't necessarily just want to focus on spelling mistakes and grammar, but also, is it formatted correctly? Is the APA looking good? Does it flow? That sort of thing. So global and local. Effective peer review comments tend to use question format. So could you do this, right? Would you consider this? It's also framed positively, so you're not being super negative, right? You're leaving constructive feedback, and then you're making a specific suggestion, not being vague. And I have a few examples I'll show you in just a second. We're going to go through this pretty fast, but here are some examples of some pretty vague comments, right? The thesis is missing stuff. What is it missing? The introduction's boring, right? That's pretty vague. I would ask you to elaborate on what do you mean by the introduction is boring, or what is the thesis missing? So essentially what I'm asking you to avoid for peer review this term is to avoid saying, this is perfect. There's nothing that has to be changed. There's always something that you can offer feedback on, whether it can be improving, again, structure, lower order, or higher order concerns. So try your best to come up with comments as we do peer review this term. The way that we're going to be doing peer review comments is you can either use track changes on Microsoft Word, or you can use suggesting on Google Docs. So either of those ways will work, and you will also have to leave a feedback summary on the discussion board post on Canvas. More details to come for peer review 1 during week 2. Essentially, peer review is worth 25 points. It's worth that for posting and leaving feedback. So there are a few things you have to do, but if you do that, you'll get full points for peer review. Okay. Anyway, that's a really quick week 1 summary for you. Please email me if you have any questions about anything I just talked to you about. You can find your resources on Canvas and the course calendar as you get started. Thanks. Let me know if you have any questions.